Well, good morning, everybody. Moving on to equal second last place in the suspects of the disappearance murder of Teresa Halbach. So as I say, these two are in equal second last place. Let me pop this up for you. Kucharski's aliens. If aliens were there planting the key, then and he didn't see them, then yes, they could have been responsible for the disappearance of Teresa Halbach. Obviously, this guy has been the butt of quite a few jokes. The point being, of course, that for the first 6 searches, Lenk and Colburn had no opportunity whatsoever to plant anything because they were teamed up with Bill Tyson, who was nicknamed, I think, Bulldog Tyson. And he took his job very seriously. And it's funny, when the Guilders say, there must have been this huge conspiracy of the Calumet Sheriff's Department and the Manitrock Sheriff's Department and the, district attorney in Calumet and the district attorney's office in Manitrock. No, quite clearly, people like Bill Tyson took his job very, very seriously. We see that, we hear that. That he made sure that he was keeping an eye on Lenk and Colburn all the time, because obviously he knew about this the situation, that really they shouldn't have been there, and I'm sure he felt that. Now, of course, then they get paired up with Kucharski, and guess what? The aliens arrive and plant the key in the bedside cabinet. And it is bizarre, isn't it? Because in the post pre-trial hearings, he says quite categorically, when they first went in the room, the key wasn't there. And by the time it came to trial, he'd tidied up his story a bit, Anyway, he's a bit of a doesn't come across as the sharpest tool in the shed. Which again goes along with this idea that sometimes in the sheriff's department, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And of course, the key, the finding of the key, was such an embarrassment that Ken Kratz even said, can you set this aside? Yeah, sure. Well, if you're going to set aside the finding of the key, you have to set aside everything, because if you cannot trust one item of evidence to be kosher, for want of a better word, you can't trust any of it. And that's obviously what we found out, following this case for over 6 years now. And there's never been a time, I wasn't duped by a documentary. I was shocked, horrified by a documentary. I was that naive that when I was watching it for the very first time, and we got to episodes 8 and 9, I'm thinking, well, when does some sort of power step in to sort this all out? And when you finish episode 10, you think, my goodness, they were completely railroaded. Anyway, what of course is interesting about the planting of the key by Lenk and Colburn is the fact that you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, because as far as I'm concerned, because Lenk and Colburn worked so well as that team together, and planted the key. We don't know what else they did. Possibly did. It's mysterious, isn't it, that the bullet arrives and there's a Manitrock. When they discover the magic bullet, what's Lenk doing there? There's no need for Lenk to be there. Anyway. It's something that's touched on in the trial documents when Andy Colburn is up on the stand, because Andy Colburn did actually run for sheriff. He's only a lieutenant, just come up in the road patrol, and he's wanting the top job. Oh, that is a huge jump in pay scale. But you can't help wondering, was this payback? Because he got the support of Jim Link. I mean, you know, of Jim Link and Andy Colburn, Jim Link is far more qualified to apply for the sheriff's job. So why Andy Colburn? And I think we saw the same over at Calumet when Sheriff Pargle retired and Wiegert became sheriff. He was desperate that the old guard that had secured the conviction of Stephen Brendan should stay in place and maintain the status quo, if you like, you know. Yeah, very bizarre that, and as I say, I think it's Dean Strang that really does investigate, if you like, on the witness stand, this relationship between Colburn and Jim Link. And it's, you know, it's I don't think they bluntly come out and say, you know, well, was it a case of, you know, I'll give you I'll give you support, you know, Link saying, I'll support you, Andy, in your run for sheriff, because you helped me so much in the investigation. But certainly that is the inference that we get. As I say, why else would Andy Colburn be running for sheriff unless it was suggested in by Jim Link? And, you know, they ask him, you know, did you get the support of Jim Link? And he said, well, I don't know, but I think it's pretty obvious that Jim Link would have been one that was promoting Andy Colburn. And in actual fact, when it came to the election, it was 10,000 for Andy Colburn, 16,000 for Herman. I think that's around about right. And I've got something interesting here I'll share with you, another picture. Which I'll need to do this. Hold on a sec. Yeah, there we go. These are the previous sheriffs of Manitowoc. Before Kasurik, there was this guy Wanish, then Kasurik, then Peterson, then Herman, and now, of course, Daniel Hartwig. And we actually see him in Making a Murderer escorting Brendan a few times. And obviously D here stands for Democratic. So, you know, the sheriff since 1957 up until 2019, the sheriffs have all been Democratic, which I found quite interesting. So I wanted to investigate a little bit further, and obviously, good friend Dave Begotka. This is Dave Begotka's YouTube channel. He's done a load of videos about the Stephen Avery Brendan Dassey case. Dave Begotka was actually on the beach when Penny was attacked, and also saw Steve on the day of the Teresa's disappearance, filling up at a, as Americans call it, a gas station, because Dave had a business, a bar in Manitowoc, and has since left. But he does know about, as it says here, the club, because they tried to get him to join the club, and when he didn't want to join, then they started messing about. So I'll leave the link to Dave's channel if you're new to Making a Murderer and you're looking for more information. Dave's definitely the guy when it comes to the corruption in Manitowoc, having witnessed it first, well, being the victim of it firsthand. So yeah, what? so I messaged Dave and said, listen, all these sheriffs in Manitowoc, they're all Democratic. I mean, are they actively Democratic? You know, he said, Democratic, Paul. He said they're demonic. Dave, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So moving swiftly on, I don't think Kucharski's aliens either planted the key or were responsible for anything else. You know, it's again, it's absurd. the only thing that's more absurd than aliens doing the crime would be Steve and Brendan doing the crime. So also in equal last place, let's see if I've got this one ready for you. Hold on a sec. I have to close that. I have to bring it up on the screen here. There you go, and then I can share it with you. I will eventually figure this out and get slicker at it, but there we go. Here we go. This was a theory that was popular for a while, and you'll see why in a wee while. You'll see why it was a popular thing in a wee while. Edward Wayne Edwards. Now, this is an article by this Dustin Rolls from August 21st, 2018. And Eddie Edwards is apparently the Forrest Gump of serial killers. Oh, okay. Edward Wayne Edwards, who died in prison in 2011, is a serial killer known for killing 5 people, 2 in Ohio in 1977, 2 in Wisconsin in 1980, known as the Sweetheart Murderers, and 1, a child who lived with Edwards and his wife in Ohio in 1996. Did he also kill Teresa Halbach and frame Stephen Avery for her murder? That's a theory that is explored in this week's episode of the My Favorite Murder podcast, in which hosts Karen and Georgia detail the serial killing life of Eddie Edwards. Here's the shortened version. During the 50s and 60s, Edward Wayne Edwards, was responsible for a series of armed robberies and arsons across the nation, for which he spent far too little time in prison, given the severity of those crimes. In 1955, he escaped from prison and went on a crime spree until he was eventually added to the FBI's most wanted list. In 1961, he was captured, served several years, and came out a reformed man. He even wrote a book about it, The Metamorphosis of a Criminal, the true life story of Ed Edwards, apparently appeared on To Tell the Truth and What's My Line, and worked as a motivational speaker. And there is footage of him, I think, on that program, that What's My Line. He was not, however, a reformed man. In fact, in 1982, he served another 2 years in prison for arson. But all of this is small potatoes compared to the murders he committed. In 2000, Wisconsin received a grant to conduct DNA tests on the victims of old cold cases. One of those cases was the murders of Tim Hack and Kelly Drew, known as the Sweetheart Murders because they were killed on their wedding day. Ed Edwards, who served as a carpenter for the wedding location, was questioned in these murders but never arrested, although he and his family picked up and moved away 2 days after the crimes. Around the same time that Wisconsin received a grant to investigate old cold cases, including the Sweetheart Murders, memories began to resurface in the mind of Edward's daughter, in part due to the fact that one of her siblings recalled that their mother had spent some time in the hospital because Edwards stabbed her in the stomach for eating half a bag of chips. Don't just slide over the last sentence, sit with it a moment. Some of those memories conflicted with the interview that Ed Edwards gave the police in 1980. So a DNA test was conducted and police arrested Ed Edwards for the murders of Hack and Drew. While in prison, Edwards decided to also confess to the 1977 double homicide, as well as the murder of a 19-year-old who lived with them. He murdered the man who Edwards had pseudo-adopted for insurance reasons. Edwards was eventually convicted and imprisoned in 2011. But yeah, he died a month later because Lady Justice sometimes forgets to show up for work. However, after his death, some began to put the timelines together and started to suspect that Ed Edwards was involved in a series of other murders. The detective investigating the Sweetheart murders, for instance, felt confident he was responsible for at least 5 to 7 other murders, or perhaps many more. That conjecture began to take on a life of its own, so much so that Ed Edwards became the Forrest Gump of serial killers. He always seemed to be around during major unsolved serial killing sprees. For instance, in documentary footage, he reportedly can be seen in the background at a funeral for one of the victims in the West Memphis 3 killings. He also spent time in Northern California during the Zodiac killings, and according to his daughter, used to make his children watch documentaries about the Zodiac killer and often yelled at the TV, "That's not how it happened." Wow. Former police detective and cold case investigator John A. Cameron believes that Edwards may also be responsible for the deaths of Lacey Peterson, Jean Bonnet Ramsey, and the Black Dahlia murders, but Edwards would have been 13 at the time. Most interesting, however, was the theory that suggested Edwards had framed Stephen Avery for the murder of Teresa Halbach. There are 3 details that led Cameron to conclude this. Edwards was reportedly only an hour away from Avery's home on the night that Halbach was killed. Edwards is implicated in other Halloween murders, and Halbach went missing on October the 31st. And that he can be seen briefly, be seen in Making a Murderer. There he is. Is that him there, the doorman? Is that him? Well, that's a stretch. Kathleen Zellner, Steve's attorney, who would probably love for this to be true, also doesn't believe it, as she told Rolling Stone. I have had nightmares that make more sense. Edwards would not have had the opportunity to kill Teresa Halbach. She would not have pulled over for him. He did not have her schedule that day to know where she would be at a particular time. Edwards did not have access to or familiarity with the Avery property to plant the evidence. At age 72, he was too old and infirm to have committed this crime. The Edwards theory is a convenient, wishful thinking placebo, and not the hard, cold reality of actually performing and the painstaking work necessary to solve a murder. Now, this is interesting, this last little sentence. John Cameron's theories, nevertheless, were turned into a documentary series by the Paramount Network, formerly Spike TV. It was him, The Many Murders of Ed Edwards. And this is an interesting comment. I remain convinced, however, that Stephen Avery is guilty as hell, based on evidence never presented during Making a Murderer. I would give this, what's his name again? Dustin, I would give him the benefit of the doubt. This is August 21st, 2018. Making a Murderer Series 2 was obviously October 19th, Brendan's birthday, 2018. So I think we can give him the benefit of the doubt of that last statement. Obviously, when Making a Murderer came out, some people were continually being duped by Ken Kratz. As I say, in all the years I've been looking at this and discussing it at length with other people, there's never ever been any moment when I've thought, could he have done it? It's just impossible. Anyway, so there we have it. In equal last place, Stephen Brendan, And in equal second last place, Kaczarski's Aliens, Edward Wayne Edwards. Hope you enjoyed that. Catch you all soon. Bye for now.